December 23rd, 1991. A scream shatters the silence of the night. Victoria's breath catches in her throat, ice crystals forming in the air. Just minutes before, she'd been staring at their resort town, once as picture-perfect as a snow globe, now twisted into something darker. Something wrong. The Christmas tree in the town square loomed like a shadow, and she'd pulled her coat tighter against a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. After years of barely enough snow to keep the slopes open, this season had brought storm after storm, each one colder than the last. That's when she'd heard it, that raw, primal scream. She'd immediately known. This was their doing, hers and the pack's. What have we done? She thinks, gut twisted in anguish. Her alpha has meddled with forces beyond their understanding, desperate to save their failing resort. And now, the scream comes again. Terror that echoes off buildings until it seems to come from everywhere at once. What's going on? A man asks beside her, a human, one of their guests. His face is pale in the strange, diffused light. Before Victoria can respond, a figure stumbled into view near the Christmas tree, lurching like a wounded animal. "Steph!" the girl screams. Victoria's stomach drops. Her wolf's hackles rise. They'd wanted tourists, wanted their resort to thrive again. But not like this. Edward Carver will rejoice when he hears of this, she thinks bitterly. That bastard alpha has been waiting for their pack to falter for years, circling like the predator he is, ready to strike. Well, it's only a matter of time until he strikes now. They damned themselves trying to save everything. The screaming girl collapses in the snow, face white as death. And howling between buildings, the wind carries that haunting melody Victoria has grown to dread. "Are you hurt?" she asks, kneeling beside the girl. What happened? The human's eyes are wild, haunted as she speaks. "It's Steph," she whispers through chattering teeth. "Someone call the police," the man shouts to the gathering crowd, their forms blurring in the swirling snow. Useless, Victoria thinks. What could human authorities do against the beast they'd unleashed? "What's your name?" she asks the girl. "Jamie." She mumbles dazedly. Her eyes meets Victoria's, begging as she adds, "She's frozen, in the cave, like ice, like a statue." Victoria's heart stops. She needs to keep this girl quiet, at all costs. "The lady in white," the girl gasps, fingers clutching Victoria's coat. "She took her." Sirens wails in the distance as Jamie dissolves into frost-edged sobs. Victoria stares at the mountains looming over them. She takes a breath, turns to the man by her side. Time for damage control. "Poor thing is having hallucinations," she tells him, pointing to the girl, and he immediately nods because of course. Hallucinations sounds more plausible than the truth. Victoria must stay strong. For now, all she needs to do is make sure no one believes a word coming out of that witness's mouth. Not a single soul must suspect what she's seen is real, or else the pack is done for. 3 years later. 1. Jamie. "Are you freaking kidding me?" Her sister's shrill voice screeches through the phone, making Jamie wince. She's tucked in the small back room behind the bar, the only place with a landline. Through the open door, the cozy main room bustles with the usual chatter and clinking glasses, clients relaxing after a long day on the slopes. The crackling fireplace and twinkling Christmas lights make the polished wood surfaces glow invitingly. It's picture-perfect holiday charm, except for Becca's voice slicing through Jamie's ear. "Stella is so excited to see you, she even made you a present," Becca rants on. What am I supposed to tell her, Jamie? That her Grinch of an aunt prefers her drunken customers to her own niece? Jamie holds back a sigh. Beyond the door, someone cranks up the TV volume. "Look, they're talking about this resort. We're on the news," a patron yells excitedly. "You can tell Stella I'll visit on her birthday," Jamie says. "I work at a ski resort, Becca. Christmas is our busiest season. The tips basically fund my year. On the TV, a reporter stands in front of the resort. Tragedy struck Pinewood Ski Resort 3 years ago when 24-year-old Stephanie Burke went missing. Jamie's stomach clenches as the broadcast cuts to a clip of her younger self, mascara-streaked and frantic. Why do they have to replay this particular clip on loop every year? Young adult going missing isn't very festive. As expected, curious patrons from the bar crane their necks toward the back room, recognizing her. Jamie focuses on Becca's voice. "Well, here's an idea," her sibling snaps. "Get a job near your family. We have plenty of bars here, you know." "Jamie, are you listening to me? You can't hide at that resort forever just because—" "I like it here," Jamie cuts her off firmly. "It's peaceful, and the mountains are stunning this time of year." "More stunning than your private suite booked in the Bahamas? I doubt it." Jamie grits her teeth. "I didn't ask you to book me a room. I never said I could come." She hears Rebecca sigh in response. "This is a family holiday, Jamie. Remember your family?" "Bex, come on." Jamie sighs. "What about Grandpa Joe?" her sister insists. "He's not going to be around forever." At the mention of her grandpa, Steph's face flashes through Jamie's mind again. They used to get along great. "Jamie, honey, is that you?" Jamie jerks back to the present at the sound of her mom's voice ringing in her ear. Crap, she must have taken the phone from Becca. "Mom," Jamie says weakly, "didn't realize you were there too. Is everything okay, sweetie?" "Why wouldn't I be okay, Mom?" Jamie replies cheerfully. "It's the most wonderful time of the year." "Honey, you don't have to put up a brave front with me." Her mother marks a pause before she decides to ask what Jamie already knows she's going to ask. "Are you still taking your medication?" "Yep." Jamie keeps her voice light. She isn't. They make her feel sleepy and even less like herself. 3 years of this crap and she's through. "I've got to run, though," Jamie says. "Big crowd waiting on their drinks. Love you." She hangs up before her mom can press further. Taking a steadying breath, Jamie pastes on a megawatt smile and heads out to face her customers. The bar goes quiet, all eyes following her. On the TV behind her, Jamie knows without looking that her younger self is still pleading on repeat. They love to replay that bit. Plays on the sensational. A man sitting at the counter goes back from staring at the screen to Jamie, mouth gaping. Jamie thinks she remembers his name as Dave. He's a ski instructor at the resort. "Oh, crap," he exclaims drunkenly. "It's her. It's Crazy Jamie." The latter hurriedly grabs the TV remote in retaliation, switching channels from the news station to MTV. Mariah Carey's new Christmas single is playing. Jamie doesn't think it's very good. By next year, everyone will have forgotten about "All I Want for Christmas Is You." "Did you really see an ice lady freeze your friend?" Dave asks. Jamie ignores him, thinks of popping one of her meds into her mouth, then remembers she flushed them down the toilet, and berates herself. Steph's frozen face is flashing before her eyes. Not real, Jamie tells herself. The whole thing had been an hallucination, caused by stress, the cold, and the altitude. Dr. Goldberg says her mind created the images as a result, and he is right. Still, in her mind, Steph's dead eyes stare in frozen terror. Always.
2. Edward. I must say, Victoria swirls her wine, I was surprised you agreed to meet. Edward raises an eyebrow. Oh? He has to admit Victoria Grant is just as beautiful as he remembers. She sits across from him in the hotel's lounge, all elegant lines and Arctic beauty, much like the luxury resort she's meant to inherit one day. She won't, though, not if Edward can help it. This resort will be his. From his corner of the mahogany bar, Edward takes in the space through practiced senses. The lounge screams old-world ski resort luxury. Crystal chandeliers, leather chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the snow-covered mountains. You have quite the reputation, Alpha. His title rolls off Victoria's tongue like honey. They say you're completely disinterested in finding a mate. Edward takes a measured sip of his Bordeaux. One must settle down eventually. The lie tastes bitter, but he can hardly tell her the truth, that he's here investigating Jonah's disappearance and that he believes she has something to do with it. And that, when he's figured out what, well, then she'll have no choice but to cede this entire land over to Edward, without the latter even having to mate with her to achieve it. Pressure from the pack? Victoria leans forward slightly and Edward catches another whiff of that winter-sharp scent. To produce an heir? Edward allows himself a small grimace. Owen, my beta, has been rather persistent lately. That at least is the truth. It's always a good idea to weave in some truth with your lies. Something shifts in Victoria's posture like a predator adjusting its stance. She waves to the bartender for fresh drinks, her movements suddenly more fluid, more calculated. In that case, she holds his gaze, heat in her ice blue eyes. Shall we just get to it tonight? Edward's lips curl into a smirk. Straight to mating? Isn't that a touch premature? I would never dare, Alpha. Her reply drips with false modesty. The bartender sets down their fresh glasses. Edward's nose twitches. Something's off about the wine's bouquet, but before he can focus on it, Victoria speaks again. How long are you planning to stay? She traces the rim of her glass. I imagine you'll want to be home for Christmas. Edward waves off the comment. If it wasn't for the gaudy decorations plastered all over town, he'd have forgotten the holiday entirely. It's a long time away, he says, making Victoria raise an eyebrow. It's in 3 weeks. I don't really celebrate Christmas. Edward pauses, choosing his next words carefully. Though I was hoping to run into Jonah while I'm here. Victoria's smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. He would have loved to see you. Always speaks very fondly of you. A strange shimmer catches Edward's attention. The chandelier light reflecting off Victoria's hair looks almost like falling snow. He blinks, forcing himself back to the conversation. Fond of me? He asks. He always shook in his boots whenever I appeared. Is that why you were hoping to see him? Victoria's hand slides over his, and Edward finds the contact oddly pleasant. Which is strange. He usually hates being touched. You make it sound as though I definitely won't be seeing him. He pulls away, noticing something flicker across Victoria's face. Surprise, perhaps, at his abruptness. But what did she expect? No one had seen Jonah in almost a year, not since he'd moved here to be with his mate. He's on holiday. There's a new guardedness in her eyes. Edward finds himself inappropriately amused by her expression, and he snorts. When it occurs to him, he can't remember the last time he'd snorted at anything. With his mate, I presume? He says, full of mirth. Victoria's smile turns indulgent. Of course. You know how these things are, Alpha. Jonah and Reem haven't even been mated for a full year. You couldn't keep those two apart if you tried. The room feels warm, the lights of the chimney bright and hypnotic. Everything seems softer somehow. Pleasant. Edward finds himself sharing her smile, though he's not quite sure why. Jonah's fine, Victoria says, and Edward thinks, yes, of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? You, on the other hand, are looking a bit flushed, Victoria pursues, making Edward frown. Do I? She smiles. It's a cold, calculating smile Edward thinks he should be worried about, but it's difficult to worry about anything. It's not like you to be flushed, Victoria says. They say you've forgotten how to have fun altogether. She leans in, her mouth close to Edward's ear. You know what I think? I think the reason you're not mated isn't because you're picky like you'd like us all to believe. It's not? Edward asks. No. Victoria smiles. I think it's because you're boring. No one wants to spend a lifetime being bored, Edward. He closes his eyes. Boring? Really? He doesn't think so. He can be interesting, surely, if he'd tried. What was I saying? He asks, his tongue feeling oddly heavy. The room has taken on a dreamlike quality, the chandelier lights creating halos that shouldn't be there. That you'd like to take things upstairs? Victoria's foot brushes against his leg under the table. Her scent has changed. Or has it always been this overwhelming? Edward frowns. He doesn't remember suggesting that at all. Really? I said that? Victoria nods, and so he assumes it must be right. His enhanced hearing picks up footsteps approaching, different from the other guests, more purposeful. A hotel clerk appears, his cologne too sharp against Edward's sensitized nose. "Excuse me, Mr. Carver, your assistant is on the phone for you. He says it's urgent." Victoria's hand finds his arm. "Take it in my office," she offers, her smile oddly bright in Edward's increasingly blurry vision. More private than the lobby. He thinks it's a good idea, like everything she's been saying for the past 10 minutes, except the walk there feels longer than it should. His enhanced hearing picks up Victoria instructing the clerk to direct any other calls to the front desk. Something about that seems important, but he can't focus enough to understand why. Her office is all glass and chrome, moonlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Edward drops heavily into the leather chair, grabbing the receiver. "What is it?" "Sir, I have the Richardson Pack's new trade agreement." Sam's voice sounds frustrated. "They're demanding an answer tonight about the timber rights and..." He stops. "Sir, did you hear what I said?" Edward squints at the ceiling. "Aren't we all looking for answers?" There's a pause on the end of the line. "Sir, are you feeling okay?" "Of course," Edward replies. "You sound a little, Sam clears his throat audibly. "You sound drunk, sir." Edward would have probably been offended if he had the energy. "Well, I'm not. Only had 2 glasses of wine with Viola." "You mean Victoria?" Sam asks. "Pretty sure it was Viola." Edward decides after a beat. Alarm creeps into Sam's voice. "Where are you exactly?" Edward looks around. "Her office?" "I think..." "Her private office?" Sam's tone sharpens. "Look, Alpha, you need to get out of there. Now." "You're the one that called me." Edward protests sluggishly. "Look, I'm pretty sure you've been drugged," Sam says, his voice sounding so very far away. A crystal paperweight on Victoria's desk captures Edward's attention, fractals of light dancing like ice. "Sir? Sir." "Stop shouting," Edward mumbles. "You're in danger." Sam's panic cuts through the pleasant haze. "Please, Alpha, run. Jump through a window if you have to. Just get out." Something in Sam's tone pierces the fog. Edward's training kicks in. He needs pain, clarity. He slaps himself hard, then grabs an ornate letter opener from Victoria's desk, driving it into his thigh. The sharp pain brings a moment of lucidity. Window. Run. He can do that. The glass explodes around him as he crashes through. Cold air hits him like a slap, snow cushioning his fall. Edward forces himself up, stumbling away from the hotel. The town lights below beckon, promising safety, but they swim and blur before his eyes. That's when he sees it, a massive pine tree, twisted and ancient, its branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Something about it seems wrong, important. Edward takes another step toward it, and suddenly the ground isn't there anymore. He lands hard in what seems to be a tunnel. The air here is different, stale, thick with mold and age. His wound throbs, keeping him barely conscious. Water drips somewhere in the darkness, the sound echoing strangely. Then he sees her. A young girl stands in the shadows, unmoving. Even in his addled state, Edward knows this is wrong. She shouldn't be here, underground, alone. "Miss?" His voice echoes oddly. She doesn't respond. "Are you all right?" He reaches for her shoulder. His fingers meet something solid and impossibly cold. The surface is smooth, pristine, like glass, like ice. The girl is made entirely of ice, her features frozen in an expression of peaceful surprise, as though she'd been caught mid-breath and crystallized.
3. Jamie. The resort twinkles with lights and garlands as far as the eye can see. Pine garlands drape every lamppost and doorway, but Jamie is feeling more grinchy than merry as she hefts the trash bag into the dumpster. Right about now, Mom is double-checking their packing list for the Bahamas trip, while Becca and Mark wrangle an overexcited Stella into bed. Grandpa Joe is probably stubbornly tinkering with that unfixable camcorder he broke years ago. Deep down, Jamie knows they don't really believe her excuses of being needed at work. But the sad truth is, their worried hovering has only gotten more suffocating since the night Steph went missing. Jamie starts back toward her bar, boots crunching through the fresh snow, What she needs is a silent night and a stiff drink. "Excuse me, miss." Jamie whirls around at the unexpected voice. A paunchy, middle-aged man hurries toward her, waving what looks like a photograph. "I'm looking for my daughter," he says breathlessly, thrusting the photo toward Jamie. "Have you seen her by any chance?" Schooling her face into a politely neutral expression, Jamie dutifully studies the image. It shows a teenage girl with long, dark hair, smiling shyly at the camera. "Sorry, I don't think so. Hope you find her, though." She turns back to the bar, but a clammy hand clamps around her wrist. "Look, I know you were friends with that other girl, Stephanie Burke," the man says. "The one who went missing 3 years ago? Maybe my daughter is with her? If you could just tell me what you saw that night." "I already told the police everything," Jamie cuts him off, wiggling her arm free. The man's smile slips, revealing a flash of something calculating. Unease prickles down Jamie's spine. "You're a reporter," she says as realization dawns, "not a worried father." "Look, what matters here is that another girl has disappeared from this resort," the journalist insists. "That makes 3 people in 3 years that we know of, all vanishing without a trace. If you ask me, we're looking at a serial situation here." "Well, nobody asked you," Jamie snaps. "And Steph is fine. She sends me postcards." Sure, those postcards never quite sound like Steph, and they're always postmarked from places Steph swore she'd never visit. And sure, Jamie hasn't actually heard or seen her friend since that night. But everyone swears Steph is fine. And so, she must be, right? The reporter opens his mouth to retort when suddenly he's yanked backwards by his collar. With a yelp, he goes sprawling face first into a nearby snowbank. "Fuck off," slurs a deep voice that sounds like whiskey poured over gravel. Jamie can only gape at the man now standing between her and the sputtering reporter. He's tall, unfairly tall, with dark hair that curl over the collar of what was once a very nice suit before it got drenched in snow. Jamie's gaze catches on the sharp cut of his stubbled jaw, though it's his eyes that make her breath stutter. Amber brown with flecks of gold, currently with pupils so dilated they nearly swallow the iris. "Thank you," she ventures. He doesn't seem to hear her, transfixed, at the twinkling lights strung along the bar's roof. "Sir?" Jamie waves a hand in front of his face. "Are you okay?" He sways alarmingly on his feet, and Jamie moves without thinking, ducking under his arm to steady him. This close, she catches the woody scent of cedar and pine mixing with the fumes of expensive wine she assumes he must have had in copious amount, seeing how he's blinking down at her. "Who are you?" His voice is deep and completely confused. "I work at the bar." Jamie gestures behind them, trying to remember if she'd served him tonight. She doesn't think so. She definitely would have noticed someone looking like that. Meanwhile, the man squints, reaching out to boop her nose with one elegant finger. "Oh," he slurs, sounding pleased. "You're not made of ice." "I'm not... What?" Jamie's heart skips. Did she hear this correctly? But he's already stumbling away, his expensive shoes leaving uneven tracks in the fresh snow. Jamie swallows hard. It must be a coincidence, this beautiful drunk man rambling about a frozen girl in a cave. Unless... She catches up to her mysterious rescuer, grabbing his arm. "Wait, please. Did you see someone made of ice? Where?" He smiles down at her, with all the benevolence of one certain of their intellectual superiority. "Your hair looks like fairy lights," he then declares. Up close, his pupils seem enormous. And here Jamie is, trying to get information from someone clearly not in their right mind. What an idiot. She needs to book an appointment with Dr. Goldberg about this tomorrow. Surely she must be relapsing. "Has anyone ever told you that you're very small?" the stranger asks, snapping back her attention. "You're like a pocket-sized person." Jamie glares. "Well, has anyone ever told you that you're freakishly tall? Like a gorgeous supermodel?" she retorts, lamely. Her eyes then catches the dark stains on his thigh as they pass under the town square's massive Christmas tree, and she freezes. "Shit, sir! You're bleeding!" "Am I?" The man looks down with mild interest. "Don't tell Sam." He gets twitchy. Jamie pinches the bridge of her nose. She can't leave some tourist wandering around in this state and injured. The man did just rescue her from a journalist. She owes him. "I live just around the corner," she says, grabbing onto the man's arm. "I'll take a look at that cut. This has nothing to do with caves and frozen women at all. Really, she's just a good Samaritan." "You're very bossy for someone so small," the man grumbles, though he does allow himself to be steered toward her apartment. Jamie guides him up the narrow stairs, one hand firmly on his arm. "I'm practically a doctor," she promises. "Well, was going to be. 3 years of med school counts for something, right?" She doesn't know why she's rambling like this, probably from nerves. Her duplex apartment above the bar is cozy, all exposed wooden beams and warm tones. It's not much, but staff housing is included and beats paying resort town rent prices. "Sit," she orders, pointing to her secondhand couch. The man complies, fascinated by the crocheted throw blanket lying there. "I should warn you," Jamie mutters, digging through her first aid kit. "I never actually finished med school after Steph's disappearance." "Disappearance?" Her guest's head snaps up, eyes suddenly sharp, and Jamie freezes. Has she been tricked? Is he another journalist? But no, his pupils are blown too wide, his movements too loose. No journalist could fake that level of intoxication. She helps him out of his jacket, trying not to notice how well it fits across his very broad shoulders and failing miserably. "It wasn't really a disappearance," she finds herself saying, suddenly eager for the distraction. "She'd just been dumped that night," Jamie pursues. "I made her come out to Spiders. That's the club up on the slopes, you know? She was crying, drinking too much." Her hands shake slightly. "She ran out into the storm. I followed but lost her in the snow. I don't know how long I was out there. Probably too long. I remember finding this cave, but..." The memory hits her. That soft, echoing humming, Steph's face turning toward her, beautiful and terrible and frozen. She closes her eyes. She's doing it again, entertaining her fantasies. "But none of that was real," she says quickly, more to herself than him. "Post-traumatic stress, or whatever my therapist called it. I made it all up, and I don't know why I'm telling you any of this." She opens her eyes to find her guest staring at her. "A cave?" he mumbles, eyes unfocused. Poor kid's probably still in there. Jamie's breath itches. He's rambling nonsense, she tells herself. He's just confused about what Jamie's been telling him. "There was humming," the man sighs, sounding tired. "A sad song." The first aid kit slips from Jamie's fingers. She didn't mention the humming to him. The melody floods back, that haunting tune echoing off icy walls, drawing her deeper into the cave that night. She'd followed it, stumbling through the darkness, calling Steph's name until... She realizes she's gripping her guest's arm too tightly. He looks serious, like he's about to tell her something crucial. Unconsciously, Jamie kneels closer. "Your place is very small," the man then declares, slouching deeper into her couch. Jamie rolls her eyes. "Don't move," she orders, going back to examining his leg. But her determination quickly morphs into confusion, because where the blood-soaked tear had been, there's only smooth skin. No cut, no scar, just dried blood. "It's healed?" She breathes, confused. The man chuckles, warm and low. "Of course, I stabbed it at least an hour ago." "Wait." Jamie frowns, looking up. "You stabbed your own leg?" Their eyes meet, and that is when it occurs to Jamie how close she and this stranger are. It's been a while. A long while. since she's been this close to anyone this attractive. Actually, Jamie's fairly certain she's never been anywhere near someone this attractive. Christmas lights from outside cast shadows across his face, highlighting those ridiculous cheekbones. Against her will, her face goes hot. "If you're fine, then you should probably go," she attempts, throat feeling dry. Sadly, his smile turns knowing, as if he could read her thoughts. "Should I?" His fingers brush her jaw, feather light, and then he leans to nuzzle her neck and Jamie gasps. What are you doing?" she asks, sounding traitorously breathless. The man's breath is warm against her skin as he sighs contently. "Can I ask you something?" he slurs, sounding very drunk. Do you think I'm boring?" "Oh, definitely not." Jamie gulps. She needs to get this man out of her apartment ASAP before she does something truly stupid, like climb him like the well-dressed tree he is, but his wrists are sliding against her skin in strange, deliberate patterns, and she doesn't entirely mind. All right, she kind of likes it. A lot. "There," he says eventually, looking pleased with himself. "You're safe now." "Safe?" Jamie snorts. When was she ever in danger? Her guest sinks back into the couch, a soft, lazy grin unfurling across his too handsome face. "Don't fall asleep," Jamie warns, noticing his eyes drifting closed. "Won't," he mutters, promptly doing just that. Instead of shaking him awake, though, she pulls the knit blanket from the back of the couch and spreads it over him. Anyone wearing a Rolex surely isn't here to rob her. She might as well get some sleep herself. The adrenaline fades as she brushes her teeth, the night's encounters replaying in her mind. Her family's disappointment, the reporter with his leading questions, and now this man on her couch. This beautiful, bizarre man, babbling about a girl frozen in a cave. It's too much, and Jamie needs to lie down. But she's only halfway to her bedroom when she hears it, soft humming from the couch. Terror strikes, and she freezes by the door. It's the same song, the exact same haunting tune that had led her through the darkness that night, searching for Steph. It must be a coincidence, she tells herself, watching the man hum to himself in his sleep. This song probably plays in one of the tourist stores or something. The melody sends ice down her spine nonetheless, and the uncomfortable pit in her stomach doesn't leave Jamie by the time she settles in bed. Outside, the first fat flakes of snow begin to fall, shining like stars against the inky night sky.
Interlude. The Spirit. She watches as he stumbles into her hollow beneath the ancient pines. She sees him speak to her newest friend, the girl who cried so prettily before the frost took her. The girl doesn't answer. They never do, once winter claims them. His blood stains her snow. The scent is different from the others, wild and sharp, like pine needles in winter wind, not human at all. She drifts closer as he collapses beside the frozen girl, his breath making clouds in her air. Even unconscious, warmth radiates from him like sunlight through ice. Such strange warmth, for one whose heart feels as frozen as her peaks. Most are afraid when they seize her, but this one is already dreaming. Dark lashes against pale cheeks, chest rising and falling like waves against her shoreline. Beautiful, in the way storms are beautiful. But he cannot stay. The cold that preserves her friends would kill him, wolf or not. She's watched too many freeze trying to find them. This one should live. She gathers him in arms made of snowfall, gentle as first frost. The great tree in town sparkles like her cavern ceiling, a proper place for him. The lights paint colours across his face as she lays him down. One last gift before she goes. She wraps winter around him until he stirs, ensuring he'll wake before true cold claims him. His eyes flutter and she becomes mist and shadow, but lingers. He looks around, confused, lost. So much like her, this wolf in man's clothing. Perhaps. But no. The cold is rising. Time to return to her quiet caves, to her silent friends who never leave. Still, she watches him longer than she should, wondering why this one feels different. Why his frozen heart calls to her own.
4. Edward. Edward jolts awake on an unfamiliar couch, assaulted by the scent of cinnamon. He's in a cramped room, a shabby attempt at rustic charm with exposed beams and mismatched furniture that makes his inner wolf bristle with confusion. This is decidedly not the 5-star suite he'd checked into at the Grant's Hotel. Fragments of the previous night filter back: Victoria Grant's predatory smile, the phone call with Sam, launching himself through a window. His head throbs as an image surfaces, a girl made entirely of ice reaching for him with crystalline fingers. Then, the memory is broken by the sound of an unfamiliar voice. "Oh good, you're awake." His attention snaps to a petite woman watching him from across the room. Her blonde hair is cut short and she's wearing what might be the most offensive pajamas he's ever seen. A shapeless brown monstrosity that somehow manages to be both too big and too small at the same time. Edward is momentarily offended that anyone would dare present themselves to him looking like this. "Who are you?" he asks, rubbing his temples. "Jamie." She snaps, her scent spiking with indignation, spring rain and something citrusy. She looks personally offended by the question, which is interesting. He assumes she must be part of the Grant's pack, though there's something off about her scent he can't quite place. He can't waste any time wondering what given the circumstances, however. "I need a phone," he declares. The girl blinks at him. "You need, excuse me?" "Phone," he repeats, spotting a bedroom behind her. "Is it in there?" The girl nods almost reluctantly, which makes Edward frown. Not only do the Grants drug him, they ship him off to some clueless girl with no etiquette. He sighs, walking towards the room. "Coffee would be appreciated." He tells the girl in passing. "Excuse me?" "Black. No sugar." "Thank you." He's about to shut her bedroom door in her face, and which is flushing rather attractively with outrage, when something clicks as he catches another whiff of that peculiar scent. Spring rain, citrus, and human. Entirely, unmistakably human. How had he not noticed immediately this girl wasn't a shifter? There's something else, something familiar that... His own scent wrapped intimately around hers, he realizes in dawning horror. This girl isn't a shifter, but she smells like one because... A memory surfaces, her kneeling before him, concerned eyes meeting his, and Edward deciding she should carry his scent. He'd run his wrists over her skin, marking her. Edward nearly recoils. He'd scent-marked an unwitting human woman. This isn't a situation he has ever faced before, and he doesn't know what to do with it. Should he apologize? Humans don't understand scent marking, and the girl probably doesn't feel as offended as she ought to be, but she is watching him, her storm gray eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Where exactly are we?" he asks, dreading the answer. "Are you even part of the local pack?" "The what?" The girl blinks and uneasiness increases sharply in Edward's mind. "You brought me here, did you not?" he insists with a frown. "Surely you must know who I am." The girl is now looking at him like Edward's not entirely right in the head. "And how the heck should I know?" she asks with a pout. "Are you some sort of celebrity or something?" Shit, this girl has no idea who she is, Edward realizes. Meaning, not only is she not a shifter, but she probably doesn't even work for the Grants at all. All of their hotel staff, even humans with no idea what shifters or alphas are, had at least been briefed on the fact that Edward was an important guest. That much had been obvious the night before. "Then why the heck have you brought me back into your home?" he exclaims, appalled. "I'm asking myself the same thing." The girl mutters, crossing her arms. Unbelievable, the girl is a puny human unable to defend herself, and yet she'd still brought him back here? "Have you got no common sense?" Edward insists. "What if I were a dangerous criminal?" "Are you?" The girl argues, making him gape. "Well, no." He concedes. But that is hardly the point. The human stomps her feet in annoyance. "You know, a simple thank you would have sufficed." She spits. Edward's lips twitch. He's tempted to remind this girl she can't speak to him like this. Except being an unknowing human, she has no idea how to address him, so it wouldn't be very reasonable of him. "Look," he says, rubbing his temples, "I'm just trying to understand what I'm doing here exactly." Jamie hesitates, her sense spiking with awkwardness. "Last night I was harassed by a journalist," she explains. "What?" Edward frowns. "Why?" "Will you let me finish?" Jamie snaps, heat rushing to her cheeks. "Anyway, you helped me get rid of him, so it didn't feel right leaving you after that, completely disoriented." "I was not completely disoriented," Edward denies, even though he doesn't remember what he'd been like in the least. Jamie's face indicates that she is well aware of that. "You didn't have to help me, but you did." She mumbles quietly. "That was, very kind of you. I just wanted to return the favor." Edward blinks. No one has ever called him kind in his entire life, because he isn't. "I'm not kind," he says, walking into Jamie's room to get to the phone. "And what you did was foolish." "Well, please try not to choke on your appreciation," Jamie calls out behind him, making Edward smirk. "How about that coffee, sweetheart?" He shuts the door on her indignant expression, catching her muttered, pretentious ass with his enhanced hearing. He finds himself fighting back an amused smile as he pulls up Owen's number, moving to the window where fresh snow drifts against the glass. His nose wrinkles at the lingering scent of stale beer and fried food, wafting up from the bar below. The Grants Resort looms above them on the mountainside, pristine and expensive, exactly where he should be right now instead of in this tiny apartment. "It's me," he announces, catching his own reflection in the window. His usually immaculate suit is wrinkled beyond salvation. Wonderful. "Oh, thank fuck." Owen's relief crackles through the line. "Sam's gone off his wits' end, claiming you've been captured and that the Grants set a trap for you and we should go and rescue you." Well, he isn't entirely wrong. Edward traces a finger along the frosted window pane, remembering crystalline fingers reaching for him. "Something happened last night, and I think it had everything to do with the Grants." "Sam's on his way over." The sound of paper shuffling comes through the line. "Richard claims you disappeared last night, though he didn't seem particularly worried. Your PA certainly was." Edward's jaw clenches. Richard Grant's lack of concern is telling. "Anyway, when are you coming home?" Owen says. "We need to plan for the merger." The scent of coffee reaches him, rich and dark. At least the human knows how to brew properly. "I can't come home," Edward says, tracking Jamie's movements by sound as she putters in the kitchen. "Jonah's still missing. Victoria claims he's on holidays, but that's a load of crap. And there's also the small matter of her drugging me." "She drugged you?" Owen's growl reverberates through the phone. "Alpha, that's cause for war." Edward rolls his eyes, catching another glimpse of Jamie through the bedroom doorway. She's measuring coffee with precise movements, her awful pajamas riding up to reveal surprisingly shapely legs. "Let's not be dramatic," Edward says as he forces his attention back to the window. "I don't think they meant to make me disappear, probably just to distract me." "From what?" Owen asks. "That's what I'd like to find out." Edward rubs his temples, trying to separate drug-induced hallucinations from reality. The Ice Girl had seemed so real. "Well, whatever it is, the Grants aren't going to just let you stick around." Papers rustle again. "They claim if you're not intent on courting Victoria properly, they'd like you off their territory by sundown." The wolf in Edward bristles at the threat, a low growl building in his chest. "We can't leave things be when Jonah's missing," he says. "We don't know that he's missing," Owen replies, his shrug audible. "And he chose to leave our pack to be with his mate. Not our problem." "He's Sam's brother," Edward protests, annoyed. "You're too soft on the pup," Owen observes. Edward rolls his eyes. "He's not a pup," he says, an image of his lanky assistant erupting in his mind. "Exactly." Owen's tone turns sly. "Stop coddling him, and maybe get one of your own. And a mate with that." "Not this again," Edward sighs. "You need to settle down, Alpha. Secure the pack, provide an heir." "Well, as long as it's not with Victoria Grant." He grimaces at the lingering scent of whatever they'd drugged him with. I would at least like to be fully conscious when I do take a mate. You joke, Alpha, but you may need to get back to courting her if you want to stick around. They're not stupid. They know you're here for a reason. Owen's voice turned serious, and they're bound to become more paranoid after last night. Edward's spine straightens. Wait, did something happen? You mean on top of them drugging you? Yes, actually. While we still don't know if something did happen to Jonah, someone did go missing from the Grants Resort. A pause. A human girl. Not our problem. The image of ice blue fingers flashes through his mind again. Not our problem? Edward snaps, indignant. If all the disappearances are somehow linked to the Grants, which is likely, how is that not our problem? Do you want the human authorities to come sniffing around shifter business? Owen keeps quiet at that for a moment. How do you know it's linked to them, though? He challenges. Because otherwise they would have asked for our help, obviously. Edward snaps. I'll call you back with an address for Sam, he says abruptly. Give me a moment. He ends the call, his enhanced hearing picking up the low murmur of television news from the other room. When he emerges, Jamie is standing frozen before the TV, coffee pot forgotten in her hands. Her scent has turned sharp with anxiety. Natalie Sawyers has last been seen 2 days ago with her parents, the news anchor announces. The Sawyers family had been staying at the local Pinewood Resort. The same resort from which 2 people have gone missing the last 2 years. Edward cautiously approaches, clearing his throat. A teenager has gone missing, Jamie whispers, eyes fixed on the screen. And in other circumstance, Edward might have been concerned with how pale she looks. But as it is, his attention is focused on the screen. Because they're broadcasting the missing teen's picture, and Edward has seen her before. In fact, he's seen her last night frozen in ice in a cave. He's sure of it.
5. Jamie. Jamie can't tear her eyes away from the screen. Natalie Sawyers smiles at the camera, dark hair in neat braids, alive, warm, unfrozen. The image flickers, and for a moment it's Steph's face instead, with that goofy grin she always wore in photos. Her hand trembles around Steph's latest postcard from Miami. Having a blast, miss you. The handwriting is neat, careful. Nothing like Steph's usual chaotic scrawl. Jamie's been telling herself the difference doesn't mean anything. Just like she's been telling herself that Jeff, the ski instructor who vanished last season, really did just take off without notice. There's no pattern, her therapist had insisted. Sometimes people just leave. But now a teenager is missing. The sound of running water filters down from upstairs, her mysterious guest helping himself to her shower without so much as offering his name. She should probably be more concerned about having a stranger in her apartment, but she can't focus on anything except Natalie's face on the screen. 15 years old. Last seen walking back to her hotel room at the resort. Just like Steph, who'd stormed out of spiders into the snow, just like Jeff, who'd gone for a late-night ski run and never came back. The sound of loud banging on her door from downstairs snaps her attention, and reluctantly she heads down to check out who it could be. The bar doesn't open before 12. Hopefully this won't be another journalist. As she climbs down the stairs to the bar front, though, it turns out to be much, much worse. The banging on her door intensifies, and Jamie hears a familiar echoing from behind the front door. I told you fools we should give Jamie a heads up. Who knows if she's even home? Jamie freezes in her tracks and gapes. Is that her grandpa she hears? Surely not. Surely this is another one of her auditive hallucinations, like the night she'd followed humming to the imaginary ice cave. No way, Becca's voice replies. She would have told us not to come and you know it. Oh my God, Jamie yelps internally. Her sister is here too? How? Why? She's supposed to be in the Bahamas. That's not a very nice thing to say, baby. Her mother's voice admonishes. That is when Jamie's gaze meet a pair of big gray eyes that look a lot like her own behind the front window pane. They widen in excitement on the small face they belong to, a face which expands into an excited grin. Aunt Jamie! Stella, her 6-year-old niece, waves excitedly at her from outside. Jamie finds herself waving back weakly as her mother's face appears by Stella's side. Honey, there you are. she exclaims, sounding extremely relieved to find Jamie alive. "Open up." She obeys, hurriedly unlocking her front door, and is suddenly face to face with the full Matthews family crisis response team assembled on her snow-dusted front porch. Her mother stands front and center, still wearing her vacation clothes, a bright floral dress jarringly out of place against the gray winter morning. Behind her, Grandpa Joe leans on his cane, grinning like a maniac, his retired ranger jacket pulled hastily over an Hawaiian shirt. Rebecca, perfectly put together even in an emergency, has one manicured hand wrapped around 6-year-old Stella's mittened fingers, while Mark hovers awkwardly behind them in his usual peacekeeper position. "Start caroling," Stella screeches, before launching herself in an off-tune rendition of Jingle Bells. Only her father attempts to follow along while giving Jamie a sheepish smile. "What are you all doing here?" Jamie asks, hurriedly ushering her family inside. Grandpa Joe's kiss lands warm on her cheek as he passes. "If you won't come to the Bahamas will come to you." He winks, his eyes crinkling with the same mischief that always made him her favorite conspirator. Her mother pauses to squeeze her shoulder, and Jamie tries not to flinch at the familiar weight of concern in her touch. "What Grandpa means is that we all took time off work to be together as a family, and that includes you. So we'd rather be here than on the beach." Jamie watches her family scatter around her space. Stella immediately gravitating to the jukebox, Mark examining the craft beer taps, Rebecca's finger running along the bar top as if checking for dust. The morning sun catches on her diamond ring, and Jamie unconsciously tugs at her worn sweater. "You are happy to see us, aren't you?" Rebecca's challenge cuts through her thoughts, her sister's sharp eyes missing nothing. "Of course," Jamie says, forcing brightness into her voice as she moves to hug each of them in turn. Her mother holds on a beat too long. "We'll be staying with you if that's all right," she asks. Jamie pretends not to notice the wetness in her eyes. "Unless you'd prefer us to go to the hotel?" Becca chimes in, making her refrain from rolling her eyes. "Let's go upstairs." Jamie diverts, gesturing towards the staircase. "I'll make you guys some breakfast." The wooden steps creak under their collective weight as they trudge upwards, luggage bumping against the walls. Jamie's duplex apartment, which has always felt much too big, suddenly feels suffocating. "What's that on the news?" Mark's question cuts through her rising panic. His lawyer's attention to detail never misses anything. The TV still flashes Natalie's photo, and Jamie lunges for the remote, but she's too late. Her mother's face drains of color, crow's feet deepening around her eyes. Is somebody missing? The tremor in her voice makes Jamie's chest ache. Rebecca cuts in before Jamie can reply. "Don't tell me this is why you didn't want to leave," she asks, shoulders tense. "Because of some random disappearance?" Jamie's nails dig into her palms. There it is. That familiar mix of concern and judgment in their eyes, like they're all waiting for her to snap. "All right, let's just calm down." Grandpa Joe's weathered hands rise in a peacekeeping gesture, but her mother barrels on. "Honey, I told you staying at this station wasn't a good idea." Her voice drips with that special brand of maternal worry. "How can you get better when—" "I am better." The words burst out sharper than intended. "Look, I didn't decide to stay here because of the missing girl, all right? This news just came up this morning. How could I have known?" Silence descends, heavy and awkward. Only Stella's off-key humming breaks it. That and the sudden damning sound of running water from the bathroom, all too obvious when no one is talking. "Aunt Jamie," Stella pipes up, swinging her legs from her perch on the arm of the couch. "Why is your shower on?" Jamie, lost in thought on how to handle her family during this impromptu Christmas vacation, is momentarily stunned by the question. She doesn't remember turning on her shower. It suddenly hits her that it's because she hasn't, and sharp panic rises in her chest. Oh God, the man. She'd completely forgotten about him. Before Jamie can even formulate a response, Rebecca's hawk-like gaze zeroes in on the Italian leather shoes by the couch. Her eyes widen, darting between the shoes and Jamie's rapidly reddening face. "Do you have someone over?" The question hangs in the air like a soap bubble about to pop. "No, I don't." Jamie's voice rises an octave. "Then what is this?" Grandpa Joe asks, waving a tailored jacket that probably costs more than Jamie's monthly rent slash. Jamie snatches it back with a shriek. "Grandpa!" Her mind races. How does she explain harboring a complete stranger for the night? Her mom is bound to think she's completely lost it. Even her unwanted guest himself was confused as to why Jamie would ever let him stay over in the first place. "Jamie?" Her mother's voice has changed, taking on a breathless quality that makes Jamie's stomach drop. What's up with that tone? Is her mother having an aneurysm? Jamie looks up to find her eyes shining with an almost manic hope. "Baby," she whispers, awed. "Do you have a boyfriend?" "What the?" Jamie's heart plummets. "Is that why you didn't want to come on the family holiday with us?" Her mother insists. "Because you wanted to spend the holidays with your new boyfriend?" She sounds so happy you'd think Jamie had just announced an engagement. "Oh!" Grandpa Joe's eyebrows dance suggestively. "Must be serious." "Guys," Jamie protests weakly. "This isn't... It's not..." The bathroom door opens with a rush of steam, and time seems to slow down. A second later, her mystery guest stands in the doorway, his dark hair tousled from the shower, making him look younger, almost boyish, if you ignored the powerful set of his shoulders and the aristocratic angle of his jaw. Water droplets trail down abs that look like they were carved from marble, and his towel is slung so low on his hips it should be illegal. Jamie doesn't dare look away, in a mix of awe and absolute mortification. "Do you have any spare clothes?" he asks casually, then blinks at her frozen family like a king surprised to find peasants in his castle. "Hello," he adds, managing to sound both polite and amused. "Nope. Nope, this just won't do." Jamie grabs his arm, trying very hard not to notice the warm, damp skin under her fingers, and yanks him back into the bathroom. No way that's her boyfriend. She hears Rebecca whisper to Mark as she closes the door. He's way too hot for her.
6. Edward. Steam clouds the bathroom mirror as Edward braces his hands against the sink, organizing his thoughts. The hot water has cleared his head somewhat, though his enhanced metabolism is still working through whatever Victoria slipped him. 2 confirmed disappearances on Grant territory, the teenager from last night, and Jonah. His wolf bristles at the thought. Jonah might have left his pack, but he was still Edward's responsibility. And now there are whispers of others, a ski instructor, a tourist. The Grant's silence on the matter speaks volumes. No alerts to neighboring packs, no requests for assistance, not even an acknowledgement of the problem. Edward's reflection slowly emerges through the condensation. Territory is everything to wolves. Nothing happens in an alpha's domain without their knowledge. If the Grants aren't asking for help, it's because they already know what's happening. Victoria's attempt to drug and compromise him makes more sense in this light, a clumsy effort to force his pack off their land before he could dig deeper. Then there's the matter of the cave. Edward closes his eyes, trying to separate drug-induced hallucinations from reality. The girl in the ice had seemed so real, her features perfectly preserved in crystal, like a macabre sculpture. He needs to find that cave again, preferably while fully conscious. But first, he needs an excuse to stay. The Grants want him gone by sundown, and investigating your potentially criminal activities won't exactly smooth things over between their packs. He dries off, grimacing at his ruined suit. The jacket is salvageable, but the pants are a lost cause between the blood and snow. He'll need something to wear until Sam arrives with fresh clothes. Edward opens the bathroom door, intending to ask his reluctant hostess for spare clothing. Instead, he finds himself facing what appears to be an entire family crammed into the tiny apartment. His enhanced senses pick up their collective spike of surprise and appreciation if he's reading their scents correctly. They all share Jamie's coloring, that striking mix of dark blonde hair and storm gray eyes, except for one dark-haired man who stands slightly apart, clearly an in-law. A child peers around her mother's legs with undisguised curiosity. Edward's brain, still slightly fuzzy, attempts to process this development. He's relatively certain these people weren't here when he got in the shower, unless Victoria's drugs are more persistent than he thought. "Do you have any spare clothes?" he asks Jamie, whose face has turned an interesting shade of pink. Her scent is a riot of embarrassment, anxiety, and something else that makes his wolf perk up with interest. "Hello," he adds, because his mother raised him with manners, even if she didn't anticipate this exact scenario. Jamie moves faster than he would have expected, small hands surprisingly strong as she drags him back into the bathroom. The last thing he sees before the door closes is the older woman's expression of delighted shock, while the younger whispers not so discreetly into her husband's ears, "No way, that's her boyfriend, he's way too hot." Edward furrows his brows in confusion at the word boyfriend. Jamie's determined expression crumples the moment the bathroom door closes behind them. Her eyes keep darting between his face and chest, mouth opening and closing without sound. "You wanted a word?" Edward prompts, partly to end her obvious discomfort, but also because his wolf is preening at her obvious appreciation, and it's a little ridiculous. Jamie awkwardly clears her throat. "Yes, well," she settles her gaze on a point over Edward's shoulder. The latter belatedly realizes that while nudity means little to shifters, humans tend to be more sensitive about such things. Jamie isn't just embarrassed, though. Her scent is sweetening slightly as her eyes roam back and forth between Edward's eyes and his chest. He silently berates himself for how pleased it makes him feel. He has much more important things to think about than how her pulse quickens when he shifts his weight. "I have a request," the human manages. "Oh?" He instantly encourages as Jamie takes her breath. "Would you mind pretending to be my boyfriend?" she blurts, meeting his eyes. For a bit." "What?" The question catches him completely off guard. It doesn't help that her pretty blush is deepening, gray eyes still struggling to find a safe place to land. "Just to get them off my back." She backpedals at his expression. "A couple days at most. No, hours. Half an hour?" Edward opens his mouth to protest, but she doesn't let him. "You just need to shake a few hands, lie about our first date, and then we'll be out of here. I'll tell them you had to go away for work and you never have to see them again. How's that?" How's that, Edward thinks. That's insane and out of the question. He has missing persons to find, a potentially criminal alpha family to investigate, and a frozen cave to locate amongst other things. So his first instinct is to dismiss the idea entirely. But then, wait a minute. This could work out in his favor. A relationship with a local would give him the cover he's been looking for. The Grants couldn't possibly object to him staying in town to court someone, and Jamie, being human, unconnected to pack politics, would seem perfectly innocent. "I'll do it," he says, just as Jamie starts stammering apologies. "No, of course you're right, it's so stupid. Wait, what?" She stares at him like he's grown a second head. "I'll pretend to be your boyfriend," Edward confirms with a solemn nod. Yes, he thinks. The plan could work. He won't just say he's dating her, though. That wouldn't be good enough. After all, he just met Jamie. Nobody would think it a credible enough excuse. No, he'll claim the human is his fated mate. That would justify his supposed urgency to stay near her. Yes, no wolf would ever think to question another's fated mate bond. These things are sacred. Plus, Jamie won't even care since she's human. It's brilliant. Why would you do that? The girl's throat bobs nervously. You know, we wouldn't... I mean, nothing would happen for real, right? Her obvious distress makes him a little ashamed. Right. He's going to have to tell her something if he wants this to work. To be honest, it would actually help me as well if... He begins, but a knock at the door interrupts. "Jamie?" Her sister's voice filters through. "Are you planning on hiding in here forever?" Edward catches Jamie's scent spike with panic and finds himself oddly torn between amusement at her predicament and guilt at using her situation for his investigation. "Let's go." he tells her, grabbing onto her hand. "What are you doing?" Jamie yelps, panicked. She pulls back on his hand, pointing to Edward discard clothes. "Get dressed," she hisses. "You're not meeting my family half naked." Again. "But my pants are torn," Edward replies in what he feels is a very reasonable manner. Given the look he receives from Jamie, though, she doesn't seem to think so.
7. Jamie. The morning sun turns the fresh snow into a field of diamonds, dazzling against the cloudless sky. Jamie sneaks a glance at Edward as they approach the chairlift station. Even in his borrowed boots and ruined designer suit, he moves with the ease of someone who's never doubted his place in the world. Catching her reflection in a store window, Jamie winces at her puffy lavender unicorn-patterned snow boots. She, on the other hand, looks like a walking marshmallow next to Edward's polished presence. No one will ever believe they're dating. Her family certainly didn't, not after she stood there gaping when her mom asked, "What's this lovely young man's name?" Edward. His name was Edward, and she really should have asked before agreeing to this charade. "Who doesn't know their own boyfriend's name?" she mutters, trudging after him toward the chairlift winding up to the Grant Hotel. "Oh, come on." Edward steadies her with a surprisingly gentle hand when her boot slips on the lift. "Nobody noticed." She sighs. Maybe not, but her family will notice something's off if she doesn't step up her game. She wants her mom to look at her with excitement instead of worry, Grandpa Joe to crack jokes instead of walking on eggshells, and her sister to stop pestering her about making better choices. "We should use this time to get to know each other," she says firmly. "Build our cover story. You know, if we're going to be selling this relationship." The chairlift sways gently as they ascend, but Edward remains silent, his dark eyes scanning the slopes with unsettling intensity. "What do you do for fun?" Jamie asks, searching his face. It's so stern she can't picture it smiling. "I must have taken this lift last night," he muses. "Yes, that makes sense. Otherwise, my clothes would have been more damaged." "Okay, next question. How did we meet?" she prompts, trying to redirect him. "At your bar?" He shrugs, still distracted. "Do you know of any caves near the Grant Hotel?" The word cave sends ice through her veins. She can't think about caves, can't let herself wonder if Natalie is there, frozen like Steph. Not with her family watching her, waiting for her to crack. "Who asked who out?" she blurts. "Never mind, I asked you, obviously." That finally earns his attention. "Obviously?" He arches an eyebrow, confusion flickering across his features. Jamie gestures between them, laughing nervously. "You know, why would you ask me?" Edward blinks, like he sincerely hasn't realized he looks like a Greek god, while Jamie definitely does not. "Never mind," she mumbles. Through the mist, the Grant Hotel emerges like a fairy tale. Soaring stone towers and gleaming windows perched atop the mountain, surrounded by dense forest and jagged peaks. "What do you know about this place?" Edward asks. "The hotel? Not much." Jamie adjusts her hat against the wind. "The Grants own the resort and everything else for miles. They're like royalty around here." "Is that so?" His tone carries an odd amusement, like he knows something she doesn't. "Actually..." Jamie's voice trails off as she spots a woman who looks like she stepped out of a fashion magazine. "See that stunningly beautiful girl? That's Victoria Grant." "You don't say," Edward quips, helping her off the lift with steady hands. "She runs the resort for her dad, Richard. Oh my God, she's coming over." Jamie's heart skips as the statuesque blonde approaches, her white gold hair glowing like a halo. "And she's looking at us," Jamie whispers. "Why is she looking at us and waving?" "Hello, Edward." Victoria's voice is honey over ice. "Glad to see you in one piece. Where'd you run off to last night?" Panic grips Jamie. The woman who signs her paychecks knows her fake boyfriend? Edward's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Here and there. Victoria's brows arch. Should I have the staff pack your things? Jamie's stomach drops as Edward stiffens. That won't be necessary, he says, his voice suddenly commanding. His hand settles on Jamie's lower back. This is Jamie. We met last night. Did you? Victoria's gaze sharpens and Jamie swears the woman sniffs the air. Her ice blue eyes widen. Did you send... I did. Edward cuts her off with a brilliant, dangerous smile. I've grown quite fond of Jamie. I knew from the moment we met that we'd share a deep connection, almost like our souls connected. Victoria's face goes chalk white. Your souls... She looks between them, her voice tight. You mean she's your fated... That's right. Edward's arm tightens around Jamie's waist. Jamie is mine. Yours? Jamie squeaks, wondering when this charade spun out of control. And I'm not leaving. Edward's grin flashes teeth. Now, let me know when my assistant arrives. Victoria growls, a sound that raises the hairs on Jamie's arms, then storms off. Jamie, still frozen in Edward's embrace, stares after her. Something is happening here she doesn't understand. She didn't buy it. Edward mutters against her hair, his breath warm. What? Jamie asks. He spins her to face him, his movements fluid and controlled. She didn't buy it. You and I need the Grants to believe it. Why? His lips lower to her ear. I'm investigating her and her father. The words hit like ice water. What? Her father... Edward growls, clapping a hand over her mouth. Be discreet. Don't talk to me like that. She slaps his hand away. Frustration flashes across his perfect features. It makes him look less composed, less aristocratic, less unreachable, but no less beautiful. I'm going to kiss you now, he says. Jamie blinks. Kiss me? His hand cups her jaw with surprising gentleness. Victoria isn't stupid, and your nervous rambling isn't helping. What if I don't want you to kiss me? She challenges. Then I wouldn't force you, Edward says solemnly, but don't expect me to play along if... Jamie yanks him down by his scarf, crushing her mouth to his. For a moment, it's overwhelming. He's so much larger than her, one hand spanning her waist while the other cradles her head. She feels delicate, safe, owned by the way he holds her, all measured and controlled. She might have enjoyed it even, if there hadn't been a mechanical tint to it all. Like Edward is doing what he's supposed to do and not what he actually wants to do. Heat and frustration war in her chest. Before she can think better of it, she threads her fingers through his hair and pulls. The sound he makes, raw and completely spontaneous, shoots straight through her. For just a moment, control seems to slip in the way his lips part, in the way his grip tightens and with how he presses against her. Then he pulls away, straightening his jacket. Thank you for your cooperation, he says smoothly, avoiding her eyes. His voice is slightly rougher than before, and it doesn't escape Jamie's notice. In the distance, Victoria watches them with golden eyes, which Jamie is certain had been blue a second ago. Hi everyone, don't worry. The full, complete story is already available. You can find it by clicking the link in the description. Some of you might recognize this one, as I originally wrote it last Christmas. It's actually one of my favorites. Back then, I had the space to write much longer stories and really dive deep into the mystery. I wanted to share it with you again, this time with visuals. But since the full story runs several hours, I decided to republish just the first part here. I really hope you enjoyed it. If this was your first time listening, or if you're rediscovering it, let me know in the comments. Wishing you a very happy holiday, hopefully spent with people you love. Thank you so much for listening, and see you in the next story.